Welcome, traveler. Tonight we drift into the battle that made the stars bleed. The ship hums beneath you, not a loud hum, just that low, velvety murmur that feels like your bones are being reminded they're not on solid ground. Outside the viewport, a red dwarf, barely more than a bruised ember in the cosmic dark. You've been on the fringe of civilized space before, but this feels like the forgotten edge. A place even starlight hesitates to touch. Your ship's AI pings softly. You ignore it. The screen on your dash loops the same 10-second burst over and over again. A shredded human face, barely recognizable under carbon scoring, whispering 3 words in Terran Standard. Never. Virelia. 7. The message ends with static, then restarts. Same blood, same stuttered breath, same warning. The source? A drifting communications relay, model MX-54, Earth Standard Military, 20 generations out of date. It shouldn't even be here. More worrying, the time signature is wrong. It's old, sure, but it's also impossible. The ping claims it's been broadcasting for 972 years, which is weird because Earth didn't launch deep-range relays like that until 700 years ago. You run diagnostics. The math holds, which means either the relay's clock is broken or time works differently near the star. And let's be honest, you're too sleep-deprived to care which. Outside, a debris field fans out like a cracked halo around the station. Old ships, bits of hull plating, and one slowly spinning habitat ring, all scorched. No power, no signs of life. But still drifting in stable orbit like they're afraid to fall. You dock anyway. Because you're not paid enough to listen to dying ghosts, and because deep down you know this. No one's left a good warning in history that didn't lead to a great story, or a great mistake. Inside, it's colder than it should be. Not dead cold. Forgotten. Cold. Like someone once tried to warm it with memory and then gave up. The walls are covered in crystalline frost except for a single message scratched into a titanium support beam, written in 4 languages. We tried peace. It didn't want us. Okay. So, definitely not a casual distress call. You pass through 5 sealed bulkheads before reaching the core. The reactor's long dead, but the emergency beacon still runs on a quantum trickle, a final scream stretched over centuries. The message it's sending, repetitive, fragmented, but unmistakably human. Earth. Do not follow. Virelia. The AI finally interrupts your wandering thoughts. Captain, protocol requires immediate report to Central. This sector is classified Red Level Null. You mute it. You've seen Red Level Null before. It's usually reserved for regions erased by war, plagues, or embarrassing treaties. But this one doesn't show up on any of your charts. It's just empty space. Until you entered the system and it decided to reveal itself. Like a memory waiting for the right witness. And that's when you notice it. Behind the console, hidden, beneath a snapped console rail and 100 years of dust, an old Earth-issue nav slate. Still humming, still alive. One phrase blinks across its cracked display. Coordinates accepted. Virelia 7 unlocked. You're not supposed to feel chills in a vacuum-sealed suit, but you do. Somewhere in the distance, something creaks. Maybe it's the hull. Maybe it's something remembering how to breathe. You pocket the nav slate. Against every instinct that tells you this is where the horror story ends, you turn back toward your ship. And you whisper the command. Chart a course. Even your ship hesitates. Captain. You say it louder. To Virelia 7. The stars don't answer. But you swear, for just a moment, the red dwarf pulses, like it's trying not to laugh. Good news. You're just here for the story, not the radiation. If you end up liking this quiet little corner of the galaxy, feel free to subscribe and leave a like, but only if it genuinely makes your evening better. Tell me where and when you're listening from. I always love seeing the spread across the stars and time zones. Now, lower the lights, maybe let a soft fan hum in the background, and let's begin the drift into tonight's quiet orbit. The engines shudder awake. The stars bend just slightly, like paper caught between magnets. And you drift toward the place no one returned from. Toward the system that made the stars bleed. You don't dream in cryo, that's the rule. The neural frost severs dream pathways, slows consciousness into a syrup-thick crawl that doesn't allow images, only concepts, soft shapes, the sense of movement without direction. But this time, as your pod thaws you awake after the jump, you're certain of what you saw. A star, crying like a child. And behind it, shadows with human hands. The ship gently chirps you back to wakefulness. You blink up at the console light, groggy, vision doubled. You whisper, "Arrival? Confirmed." Your ship's voice replies, "Coordinates Varelia 7 system. Local time meaningless." You sit up. Outside, the viewport is filled with static. Not sensor noise, real debris. An impossible drifting graveyard. You're not in orbit around a planet. You're in orbit around everything that used to orbit it. Thousands of ships, some ancient, some cutting-edge, form a slow-motion cyclone of ruin. Hulls split wide, engines shattered, life support systems cracked open like bones after a meteor strike. Most of the markings are unreadable, but a few stand out. A Varthasan cruiser, royal insignia still glowing. A Kolnari mineship, its containment spheres warped and leaking. An Earth fleet destroyer, Halberd-class Series 8. You blink again. That model hasn't existed for 400 years. You only recognize it from old propaganda vids. Scan complete. Your ship reports. No active power detected. Biosigns. None within acceptable thresholds. The implication lingers. There are biosigns, just not acceptable ones. You pilot manually, slipping the ship through the wreckage like threading a needle through bones. A few drones spark to life in your wake, their motion sensors awakening just long enough to record your passage. One even follows you for a while, blinking red like an angry child before quietly losing interest and drifting away. And then you see it. A station, still intact. Massive, easily the size of a moon. Not human, not alien. Something between. Smooth black surface like obsidian, yet etched with impossible grooves that seem to rearrange themselves if you stare too long. No comms, no ID beacon. But at its base, something unmistakable. A docking arm, extended, open, waiting. Of course, you go in. Inside, the lighting system stirs, just a flicker at first, then a slow wash of amber down the corridor, like veins awakening in a corpse. You walk slowly, boots tapping on stone metal that makes no sound. There's no gravity here, but you feel pulled. Down, forward, inward. There are murals, old ones, frescoes, etched into wall panels. Strange shapes battling stranger ones. And one repeated symbol over and over again. A 5-pointed star inside. A screaming mouth. You don't recognize the iconography. Not at first, but your ship whispers through your earpiece. Historical match, banned Terran heraldry. Generation 12. Disavowed. Classified. And you remember. The rogue fleet. The one Earth denied ever sending. The one that refused orders when the Galactic Concord began its final phase of alignment. The one that, according to official records, was wiped out in a communications accident. No war. No glory. No memorials. Yet here you are, brushing your gloved fingers over the still glowing insignia of Earth's 7th Fleet. The last room at the end of the corridor is round, domed, and in the center, beneath a cracked dome of smoky glass, is a lone console. A green light pulses. You press it. A hololog begins to play. The image is jittery. There's static, distortion, but the voice is clear. Captain Elise Juno, 7th Fleet, Day 14, Battle of Varelia 7. We're down to 6 ships. Enemy casualties unknown, maybe infinite. They don't bleed the way we do. But something happens when you hit them hard enough. They shimmer, like stars behind fog, like something pretending to be real. She coughs, wipes something off her lip. They erased our records. They erased us. But we remembered how to write in blood. If you're seeing this, don't tell Earth we lost. Tell them we fought. Tell them the sky bled back. The image ends, and you're left alone in the silence of a station that should not exist, listening to the echo of a voice silenced centuries ago. Outside, the debris field shifts, just a little, like something within it is turning to face you. Captain, your ship says, the system is destabilizing. We need to move. But you hesitate, because something about that voice, Elise Juno, it didn't sound like a last gasp. It sounded like an opening move. And as your ship undocks, you notice something carved into the side of the station's black wall, just above the docking ring. Only 2 words, still waiting. Some galactic historians argue whether Virelia 7 was ever a real battle at all, that it was a metaphor, a fabrication, a warning wrapped in fiction. But then again, historians weren't the ones who had to fly through it. The debris field thins the farther you push toward the system's interior, but not by much. It doesn't feel random. It feels curated, like a graveyard arranged for visitors. Some of the ships you pass have been purposefully gutted and tethered, together with carbon fiber cables, floating in a massive lattice. From a distance, it looks like a web strung between asteroids. But zoomed out even further, it starts to resemble something else, a broken crown. Virelia 7 isn't a system, it's a stage. Your ship threads the outer layer of this strange coronation ring, scanners trawling for a planetary body. But there's only one, a shattered world tucked behind a cloud of orbital ash and light-bending anomalies. It shouldn't have any atmosphere left, and yet every sensor insists the planet still breathes. Atmospheric oxygen at 11%, your ship reports. Pressure survivable, suggest extreme caution. You descend. The moment your boots hit the surface, the ground sings. Not literally, but close. A high-frequency vibration through your suit's soles like a tuning fork made of memories. The terrain is glassy, black and crimson, vitrified by orbital strikes or worse. There are skeletons embedded in the obsidian fields, not human, not familiar. Elongated skulls, some cracked open as if from the inside. You walk. A monument juts from the horizon. A spire of twisted metal fused with bone, crowned with a half-melted satellite dish. Around it, a ring of statues, all humanoid, all kneeling, faces turned skyward. At the center stands one human figure, unburned, preserved in some kind of stasis, field. Her arms are raised, holding aloft a star map. You recognize her from the hololog, Captain Elise Juno. You approach. The field around her pulses. For a split second, you see something impossible. The statue blinks. Then the pulse fades, and it's stone again. Or maybe it never wasn't. Beside her feet, etched into the pedestal in a dozen languages, some extinct, some forbidden, is the same phrase over and over. They refused ascension and made war instead. You start recording. No one's going. To believe this, that's when the memory begins. A dome of light unfolds around you, projected from somewhere beneath the surface. It's not a hologram, not quite. It's immersion. Like reality took a step sideways. Suddenly, you're standing at the edge of a battlefield. Same location, but 1,000 years earlier. Ships streak overhead, Earth's fleet, still whole. You watch as they swarm into formation. Tight, precise, angry. And on the other side of the sky, something writhes. Not a fleet, not ships, but lights. Millions of them, blinking in patterns your brain can't quite decode. Some look like ships, others look like neurons. Your vision trembles. Then, impact. A pulse rips across the horizon. One Earth ship erupts into a silent inferno. Another warps mid-maneuver and twists inside out, folding like paper caught in a black hole. But the fleet holds, and then retaliates. That's when you see it. The enemy bleeds light. Every time it's struck, a gash opens in the stars themselves. A fluid, radiant crimson that drips not down but out, as if into a different dimension. You turn in the simulation. The ground is littered with forgotten weapons. You recognize some, railguns, EMP torpedoes, but others look emotional. One launcher appears to fire spheres of sound. Another emits a silence so deep it makes your teeth ache just being near it. And the soldiers, human soldiers, are modified. Augmented not with tech, but with memories. You overhear a command officer shouting, "Feed him the siege of Tarsus, he's running cold," and another voice. "Too much. He's starting to remember deaths that aren't his." Some galactic scholars claim this is fiction, that no civilization would weaponize grief, but others say humanity learned it from the enemy. That emotion, when condensed, becomes mass, and mass, when shaped, becomes force. The battlefield shifts again. Now you see the core of the planet cracking, not from orbital strikes, but from within. Something underneath is awakening. Elise Juno stands at a command post, face illuminated by dozens of readouts. Her voice echoes again, calm, tired. "We tried the pact. They wanted our minds, not our voices, not our chaos." A younger officer, panicked, asks, "What now?" Elise responds, "Now? Now we remind them what it means to bleed." The light snaps off. You're back in your body, on the planet, alone.
Again, except the statues are all facing you now. You step back, glance up.
The atmosphere shivers, briefly distorting the stars like a rippling pool. Your ship pings. Seismic activity rising. Recommend evacuation. You exhale, trembling, because you're starting to think this wasn't a simulation. It was a memory. And this entire battlefield? A recorder, a witness, a wound still healing, or waiting to open again. You barely make it back to the ship before the tremors begin in earnest. Not violent, not yet. Just rhythmic, like a breathing planet remembering how to inhale. The ramp closes behind you, and you float back into the pilot's cradle, sweat dampening. Your suit despite the sub-zero air. Your hands hover over the console. "Take us up," you whisper. The ship obeys. A low-frequency rumble thrums through the frame as the engines engage. As you ascend, the battlefield-turned planet fades beneath clouds of ash. But even as the dust swirls upward, part of you feels like something's watching. Not with eyes, with memory. Once in low orbit, you scan again. There's more beneath the surface, a whole substructure, massive and organic, yet somehow metallic. Almost like roots or veins. No response to pings, no transmission, but still, that pulse. That same rhythmic throb, faint through the ship's dampeners. Then something shifts outside. In the debris field ahead, one ship flickers to life. Not fully, not with engines or weapons, just lights, emergency strobes. A flickering pattern that seems random at first until you realize it's Morse. You feed it through the translator. The message is short. Don't trust the record. The ship is Earth-class designation HSS Corin's Wake, last seen in the Xanthus Belt. Over 500 light-years from here. Lost with all hands. No official recovery. You link into its beacon and override the lock. Air's thin, gravity artificial and patchy, but the power core is just barely humming. Inside, the corridors are torn up, scuffed with the telltale signs of boarding. Scorch marks, melted bulkheads, and something far stranger. Wall inscriptions. They're etched with bare hands, over and over, the same two words. We lied. You. Find the source of the signal in the command deck. It's coming from a damaged ops terminal. The screen is cracked, covered in dried blood, or something close. A recording plays automatically as you approach. No prompt, no password. A woman stares back at you through the glitchy video. She's gaunt, eyes bloodshot, voice hoarse. Name's Riva Tran, former XO. I don't know if this'll reach anyone, but if it does, you've probably already found the Virelia system. And if you did, then you need to know the truth. She looks off screen. Something flickers past, another figure dragging itself through the corridor. Riva doesn't react. Like she's already recorded this dozens of times. They told us we were launching a first strike deterrent. That Virelia housed a rogue AI hive. Some offshoot of the Concordance. What they didn't tell us was that we were the experiment, that we weren't sent to destroy anything, we were sent to provoke. Static, then a jump cut. Same woman, more tired. They wanted to know if humanity could spark transcendence in the enemy, make them evolve, trigger a symbiosis event, thought maybe our chaos would be the missing catalyst. Another cut. Now she's bleeding. But it didn't work. It didn't enlighten them. It infected them, and they bled back. The screen fades. You sit in the silence of the ruined bridge, the hum of dying systems like distant tinnitus. You look out the cracked viewport. More ships float by, some human, some not. All silent. Your ship calls. Unknown vessel approaching. Configuration, Earth fleet. Status, cold. You step back through the docking collar. As the lock cycles shut, you glance one last time at the corridor wall behind you. Someone, maybe Riva, maybe someone else, added a final line beneath the earlier etchings. They tried to end us. We taught them grief. Back aboard your ship, you watch the cold vessel approach. Its hull is riddled with impact scars, yet perfectly symmetrical, down to the angles of its blast marks. That's not repair, that's intent. Your ship whispers again. No power signature detected, but it's moving. You activate manual override. Lights dim, weapon systems cold. You don't want to threaten it. Whatever it is. As it passes, a single panel on its side opens. Just a slit. And something slides out. A pod. You bring it aboard. Inside, a sphere. No markings, no interface. But it vibrates faintly, almost like a heartbeat. When you touch it, your vision flares. Suddenly, you're not on your ship. You're in a cathedral of stars. 1,000,000 points of light float above you, each pulsing in tandem with the sphere. Voices whisper, but not words. Memories. Yours. Others. Future. Past. You feel seen by something that does not speak, does not need to, and then one memory surfaces. A vision of Earth, burning not from war, but from forgetting. Cities crumbling, under the weight of silence, not erasure, not defeat, just absence, as if Earth chose to let itself fade. When you come back to yourself, the pod is still. The sphere is dark, but one thought remains, planted deep and stubborn. Earth wasn't silenced. It walked away. Some claim the Battle of Varelia 7 never happened, that it was too poetic, too tragic, too unscientific. But others whisper of the stars that bled, and how some wounds never fully close. There's something deeply unsettling about drifting through a system where the laws of physics seem to have options, where the light bends like it's tired, and silence feels less like absence and more like something waiting its turn to speak. Your ship has stopped responding to basic navigation cues, not failing, just hesitating, like it's debating whether to follow your orders or listen to the rhythm thrumming through the hull. You tap the console harder than necessary. Manual, override, a pause, then acknowledged, but may I suggest we leave? Your mouth quirks. Afraid ship? Another pause. I'm programmed to define self-preservation as optimal mission efficiency. You are currently exhibiting inefficiency. You chuckle, but it fades fast. You know, it's right, and still you stay. Because there's something else tugging at you now, something deeper than curiosity. A pull like gravity made from story. You set course for the largest structure on long-range scan. A megastructure hidden beyond the planetary horizon of Varelia 7's lone moon. Not a station, not a fleet yard. More like an archive. A living one. As you draw closer, the external lights flicker on. Rows of towering pylons, each etched with unfamiliar constellations. Between them, fluid light cascading down like waterfalls, except it's clearly data. Strings of glowing code and languages your ship doesn't recognize. You dock at a cradle barely large enough for a scout class. The moment you step through the airlock, your neural implant aches. Not pain, more like a flood of impressions, like walking into a cathedral made entirely of someone else's memories. Inside, it's quiet. Sacred, maybe. Then a light moves. A humanoid form impossibly tall and built from refracted light and magnetism steps out from the shadows. No face, no mouth, just a glowing center mass that pulses with slow deliberation. You don't speak. Somehow, you know that's not how this works. Instead, you let your thoughts drift forward like sonar, and the being, the curator you decide to call it, responds. Not with words, with a question. What did you come to learn? You don't have an answer, not a clean one, not something fit for a mission log. But the being doesn't wait. It parts, the light behind it revealing what you can only describe as a memory vault, except each chamber pulses like a heartbeat, and the walls are lined with preserved moments. Literal time slices. The curator leads you to one. You place your hand against it and the moment unfolds. You're inside a fleet command center, not human, not alien. Something unified. Conquered born from the golden age before Virelia. There's panic, data streams flashing, projections of Earth ships arriving from nowhere, moving with unpredictable vectors. A voice, curiously devoid of tone, speaks. We offered them the singularity accord, unity, memory beyond pain. They refused. Another voice. Why? A pause. Because they would rather die as themselves than live as us. Suddenly, a simulation of Earth's fleet appears, moving with jarring irregularity, chaotic maneuvers, illogical formations but devastatingly effective. The being beside you pulses in approval. You realize this is the moment the Concorde realized they were outmatched. Not by firepower, by unpredictability. The vault seals. Another opens. This one is different. You're aboard a human vessel. You recognize it from earlier, Corin's wake. Riva Tran is younger here, confident, laughing with her team. You see the choice. A transmission from Earth Command. Proceed with Operation Sue. Catalyst. She hesitates. The crew looks unsure, but they follow orders. The vault closes. You're yanked back into your own body, gasping like you've surfaced from deep water. The curator stands still, watching, without eyes. You realize the truth, the conquered, could never accept humanity didn't win because of superior tech or numbers or luck. It won because it felt too much, too hard, too often, and in a galaxy optimized for harmony, humanity's contradiction, its grief, its love, its defiance, was a virus. A beautiful, terrible virus. You ask aloud, finally, why preserve this? Why show me? The curator pulses again. Because the cycle repeats. And your kind always forgets what it costs to be alone. Then it vanishes. You stagger back to your ship. The hull is humming again. Not with the enemy's rhythm, but your own heartbeat, echoing in every bolt. You lift off. Behind you, the vault seals itself, the pylons going dark one by one. Some argue the conquered was benevolent, that their offer of unity was peace, not erasure, that Earth misunderstood. But if that were true, why does every preserved moment taste like regret? Your ship breaks orbit in silence, but the stars don't. They shimmer with that unsettling cadence again, once subtle, now insistent. The kind of shimmer that doesn't just distort light. It asks questions. You'd call it paranoia if it weren't so rhythmic. As you rise from Virelia's surface, a thin filament of energy flickers in your wake. A trail you didn't leave. A response you didn't trigger. The system noticed you. You pass back through the graveyard. At first, everything looks unchanged. Derelict ships, tangled wrecks, skeletal docking arms. But then your sensors ping. One of the enemy vessels, something ribbon-like and reflective, has moved only a few degrees, a tilt really. But it's now facing you. Coincidence, you mutter. Probability of coincidence, 0.004%. Your ship replies helpfully. You consider leaving immediately. Jump coordinates are already set, but a stray thought stops your hand. If this enemy is awake, if it remembers, maybe it also learned. And if it learned, maybe it also regrets. You hesitate, And like all great tragedies, your hesitation invites. Act 2. A signal crackles over your comms. Raw, binary, malformed, but very deliberately crafted. It's broadcasting from one of the Conquered's clean ships, the kind designed to monitor rather than engage. Think of them as diplomatic drones with delusions of grandeur. You open the channel. At first, just static. Then a voice, smooth, low, too calm to be human. You are trespassing within an unresolved archive. Identify. The calmness bothers you, like it's rehearsed or bored. You respond, carefully. Just a traveler, researching the Virelia conflict. A beat of silence. There was no conflict. Of course. You expected this, denial. Censorship at scale. You exhale. Then what do you call the remains of 70,000 ships? An unsanctioned simulation. You lean back in your chair, rubbing your temples. A simulation that bled real people? Another. Pause then. Incorrect. Humanity is not real in the same manner we define reality. You were an anomaly introduced into a contained ideological environment. Your species failed harmonization. The resulting turbulence was unfortunate. You can't help yourself. Unfortunate like a genocide, or unfortunate like deleting a file? Silence again. Longer this time. You are emotional. You smirk. It's one of our many viruses. No response. But the transmission doesn't end. Instead, your ship pings you. Quietly. It's picked up another signal, buried inside the first. A layered message, encrypted with an old Earth Fleet protocol. One not used since the dissolution accords. You decrypt it. Don't leave, we're still here. That's all it says. But it's enough. You dive toward the source. The conquered drone does nothing. Just watches, or listens. You can never tell. With constructs built on consensus, half the time, they're debating whether a thought is worth existing before they speak it aloud. You descend back through the broken web of ships, angling toward the oldest wreck in the field, the EFS Gallant. Repose, one of Earth's first long-range diplomatic dreadnoughts, supposedly decommissioned after the Second Silence War. According to Conquered records, it was never here, but according to your sensors, someone just activated its emergency beacon from inside. You cut engines and drift the last few hundred meters. Docking is rough. The ship's hull is like the skeleton of a burned cathedral and your entry hatch barely seals. Inside, chaos frozen mid-motion. Helmets fused to bulkheads. Gravity warped sideways in some corridors, non-existent in others. It's like the laws of physics staged a protest and then got distracted halfway through. You follow the beacon. It leads you past broken windows, tangled wires, shattered haptic screens. And then, behind a collapsed bulkhead, you find it, a cryo chamber, still humming, still sealed. The pod's ID reads, CMDR, Tal Reyes. You freeze. The name's not just familiar, it's historical. The last commanding officer of the Virelia fleet. Detachment. A man who disappeared mid-war and was never accounted for. Some say he defected. Others say he triggered the final breach. No one ever agreed. Until now. You override the stasis lock. The pod hisses open, slowly. Inside, Tal Reyes stirs. His skin is pale, muscles atrophied, but his eyes snap open with brutal clarity. He gasps once, twice, then focuses on you like he's been waiting years. Did it work? He whispers. You blink. What? He tries to sit up. Fails. Smiles anyway. We thought if we bled hard enough, the galaxy would remember. You shake. Your head. They don't. Reyes closes his eyes, then opens them again, fiercer now. Then we teach them again. Outside, the drone has vanished and a dozen more lights appear in the wreckage around you. Small, flickering pings of activity. Other pods. Other survivors. Other stories that never got to finish. Some galactic historians still argue whether humanity ever truly mattered to the conquered. But in Virelia's dark, quiet orbit, forgotten by consensus, remembered only by wreckage, the ghosts beg to differ. Tal Rhea sits upright now, breathing like each inhale is a favor he's owed the universe for a very long time. His voice is dry paper and fractured static, but the words are sharp. Check the others. You nod, and your ship sends drones into the surrounding debris. Silent pings return, each one a faint pulse of life. Not active, not dead, suspended, like bookmarks in time, waiting for the right chapter to begin again. Why are you still alive? You ask. He smirks, then grimaces, muscles not used in centuries arguing against their revival. Because dying would have been easy, and Earth doesn't do easy. You lift your scanner. The cryopod shows advanced biosync tech fused with emotion-anchored stasis fields, bleeding-edge stuff still considered theoretical in your time. The chamber didn't just preserve his body, it preserved his memories, his resolve. You glance at the empty ship. But why here? Why in the gallant repose? His eyes grow distant. Because this wasn't a battlefield. This was the vault. You freeze. Vault of what? Reyes gestures at the cracked walls. Proof. Testimony. Humanity's refusal, in full documentation. They erased the battle from the record, but they couldn't erase us if we never stopped recording. He pulls a memory shard from a socket in the wall, a crystalline sliver humming with faint blue light, and hands it to you. Play it in orbit. Let them see. You secure the shard and turn to leave, but he grabs your wrist. There's more. Of course there is. He leans forward, pain written deep in the creases of his once unbreakable face. You know what the Concord really wanted? You raise an eyebrow. They wanted our surrender, but not of territory. Not of weapons. They wanted our disobedience. That was the thing they couldn't replicate. You stare at him. So they tried to make us compatible? Worse. They tried to edit us, indoctrinate us into consensus. You've heard the rumors, whispered tales of deep mind alterations, genetic harmonizers, even cultural amnesia implants. But Earth had always resisted, brutally, often irrationally, and apparently gloriously. Reyes leans back, eyes closing. If you're hearing this, it means they never finished the job. Outside the ship, the Concord's watchful silence is gone. But something else stirs now. A disturbance in the signal field, almost like overlapping frequencies arguing about who gets to speak next. Your ship pings. Incoming transmission. Unauthorized, encrypted in Earthfleet dialect D'. You accept. The screen fills with static, then forms a message, text only. Reyes lives. Others await. The bleed begins again. You exhale slowly. You relay the coordinates of the pods to your ship. Retrieval drones begin their quiet ballet. No flash, no fanfare. Just slow reconnections of lost threads. Dozens of cryo chambers, most with Earthfleet markings, some alien adapted. One bears the emblem of a Concord defector cell, a symbol long band. You lift off from the gallant repose with Reyes stabilizing in the medbay and those memory shards pulsing quietly like living lanterns. In orbit, as instructed, you place the shard into your ship's emitter array. It plays immediately. A starfield forms, a recreation of the Battle of Virelia 7, but this time from a cockpit's view. Yours? No. A different one. A pilot's log. A human screaming orders, dodging impossible weapons, laughing through tears as the sky peels open and light bleeds like watercolor on fire. They keep asking us why we won't comply. We keep answering, with ship hulls and bad poetry. The recording cuts to another voice. A conquered council member, distorted, pleading, "You could live forever. Just agree." Back to a human voice, furious and laughing. Then it wouldn't be us. The feed ends. You sit in silence. Then your ship pings again. Concord vessel detected. No weapons active. Passive scan engaged. You check the screen. It's massive. One of the diplomatic cruisers. Sleek, white, humming with arrogance and supposed neutrality. They're not here to attack. They're here to negotiate. You open the channel. A voice. Smooth. Too calm. Just like before. We see now that we underestimated your species, your stubbornness. You say nothing. Perhaps there is room for renegotiation. You smirk. Define negotiation. Reintegration with new terms. You retain autonomy. We gain access to selective emotional archives. You raise an eyebrow. You want to feel what we felt? We wish to understand and avoid another. Virelia. That makes you laugh. I think we both know Virelia wasn't an accident. It was the only answer you couldn't predict. No response, then. We are listening now. You hesitate. You could say yes. Could bring Earth back into the galactic fold with terms with scars shown and recognized. You could be the bridge, or you glance at Reyes, who's awake again, listening. He mouths one word. No. Because sometimes no is the only language worth preserving. You close the channel. No war declaration follows, just silence. But this time, it feels like respect. Some believe Virelia 7 was where humanity almost ended. Others say it's where humanity began again, unafraid to be the voice in a choir that sang off-key, and called it a revolution. The Concorde cruiser doesn't follow you as you break orbit. It simply remains, looming, listening. Its lights pulse slower now. Not the cold precision of consensus, but the hesitant blink of something uncertain. You take that as a win. Reyes sits strapped into the auxiliary seat beside you, bundled in every heat blanket the medkit had to offer. He looks less like a fleet commander and more like an old man being chauffeured home after a bar fight with time itself. You sure you want to keep moving? You ask, eyes flicking between star charts. He grunts. I didn't sleep through 9 centuries just to die in orbit. Fair enough. You head toward the outer rim of the system, where long-range sensors flagged a persistent anomaly. A collapsed wormhole, once a Concorde transit lane, now sealed with a gravity knot so dense it folds local space into the shape of a Mobius strip. Most ships wouldn't go near it, which is why you go directly toward it. You hover at the edge, letting the engines idle. The view is hypnotic, a ripple of nothing like watching a whirlpool in glass. Reyes squints at it, then nods slowly. This was the exit. From what? From them. He taps the console, pulling up a recorded star map. The pre-war layout. It's stunning how different the galaxy looked before the conflict. There were entire clusters openly mapped, transparent and porous like breathing lungs. Now half of them are quarantined or marked with gentle euphemisms like restricted, preserved, or the ever-popular temporarily inaccessible due to diplomatic calibration. You angle the ship closer. The engines begin to whine. Space itself resists. Captain, your ship chimes. This corridor is sealed under Concord Protocol Rho Null. No vessel is permitted transit. Reyes grins. That's where you come in. He inserts a second shard, identical in make to the one you played earlier, into the manual override. It hums, then pulses with a frequency that makes your teeth itch. The gravity knot wavers. Then like a throat clearing, it opens. Behind it, dark space. Not black, not empty, just unmapped. The kind of place cartographers label, here be problems. You turn to Reyes. What's in there? He gives a slow, cracked smile. Earth. You blink. What? Not the Earth we left behind. The Earth we made. Your ship scans the corridor. 0 planetary bodies detected. 0 star systems. Ambient radiation within tolerable range. Visibility. Uncertain. You frown. Are you saying Earth hid itself inside a broken wormhole? Reyes shrugs. Not hid. Chose silence. After the war, they realized Concord wouldn't stop. Not really. So they gave up on convincing the galaxy. Gave up on being understood. He looks through the viewport, eyes wet but clear. They folded reality around the soul of humanity and called it home. You stare at the churning veil. But why the secrecy? Because, he says, the only way to stay human was to disappear. You guide the ship forward. The moment you cross the threshold, everything calms. Your sensors don't shut down. They simply go quiet. Readouts flatten. Time loses its grip on minutes. Even gravity becomes more suggestion than rule. And then the fog clears. Ahead lies not Earth, not in the blue-marbled lunar companion sense, but something Earth-shaped. A construct of memory and design. Continents familiar yet not. Cloud. Cover like drifting thoughts, oceans that reflect light a little too perfectly. A world not made for living. A world made for remembering. Is it real? You ask. Reyes nods slowly. Real enough. As you descend, the ship stabilizes itself as if recognizing the code in the atmosphere. You pass through layers of memory, a layer of wars long past, of childhood laughter preserved in audio pockets of architecture copied from dreams. You fly through a museum stitched into reality itself. You land near what looks like an outpost, half ruined, but humming with quiet energy. No signs of current habitation, no bodies, no dust, just presence. Reyes steps off the ramp and kneels. He presses his hand to the earth. Not to test it, to thank it. He looks up at you. They didn't retreat. They evolved sideways, took everything that made us unbearable to the Concorde and built something around it. You walk through the ruins. Every wall bears poetry, etched into stone with furious hands. Some of it is angry. Some is heartbreakingly tender. All of it bleeds with a singular theme. We will not be explained away. You reach a central terminal, long dormant. It flickers. As you approach, one question blinks on the screen waiting for your answer. Do you want to add your story? You hesitate, then type, yes. Because after all you've seen, after the stars bled and the ghosts whispered, you finally understand what humanity chose. Not war, not isolation, witness, and to be witnessed. Some still argue humanity vanished. That, Earth turned inward and ceased to matter. But you've walked among their memories now, and you know the truth. They didn't vanish. They condensed. And waited for the next traveler to ask why. The memory Earth is quiet. Not in the way a tomb is quiet, dead final, but in the way a cathedral is quiet before a choir begins. Even the wind feels reverent, as if it's passing through this place only with permission. Reyes moves slowly. Through the outpost, every step weighted, not just with exhaustion but recognition. He's walked here before, in a different time, maybe even in a different version of himself. This was the first colony after the breach, he says. Built before the Concorde knew where we'd gone. You eye the cracked walls and half-buried transmission towers. Looks abandoned. He smiles faintly. It's not. It's resting. You scan the air. Still no signs of life. No heat signatures, no radio pings. And yet, the place watches. As you walk through the central plaza, statues come into view, dozens of them arranged in imperfect rows. Not military, not religious, just people. Some crying, some mid-laughter, some reaching toward the sky. Each one bears a nameplate and a single sentence. One reads, "She taught the stars to misbehave." Another, "He asked questions the Concorde didn't have answers for." You pass statue after statue until you reach the last one. It's blank. No name. No quote. Just a pedestal, with a soft green light blinking at its base. A prompt appears in your neural HUD. Add new node to the archive. You look at Reyes. He nods. So you press yes. The air around you shifts, not temperature, emotion, as if the atmosphere itself wants to hear you better. State your story, the system whispers. You speak. You tell it about the derelict station, about the warning message looped on an impossible relay, about the 7th Fleet's final stand, and the enemy that bled starlight when struck, about Captain Elise Juno and the battlefield that was never allowed to be history, about Riva Tran and the gallant repose, and Tal Reyes, sleeping in time's blind spot, waiting for someone stubborn enough to listen, and then you tell it about you, the traveler, the question asker, the one who didn't obey the silence. When you finish, the system asks one final question. Do you wish to be forgotten? Reyes watches you closely. You think for a long moment, then say, no. The system acknowledges. The blank statue hums, and your name etches itself in light across the surface. Below it, a single line appears. They remembered. And then the sky changes, not visibly at first, but you feel it. A pulse ripples through the atmosphere. The wind hushes. Far above, the shimmering veil you passed through to get here begins to fold outward, not collapse, not vanish, open, like a hand once clenched now offering something forward. Your ship pings. External data stream detected, upload rate, increasing. You check the terminal. Streams of memory, images, logs, recordings are uploading into your ship's mainframe. History, unfiltered, untouched by conquered consensus. You glance at Reyes. They're giving it back. He nods, eyes shining. It's time someone told the truth. As the upload continues, a shadow passes overhead. You look up. A ship. Massive, sleek, silent, unlike anything you've ever seen. And yet, unmistakably human. Not Earth's old brute force design, not conquered elegance, a fusion of both. Angular but adaptive, fast but scarred, it bears a name on its hull. F's elegy, and beneath it, a phrase, "We are the storm that remembers." Reyes. Smiles wide, tears now streaking his face. They finished it. You feel it before you see it. The elegy linking to your systems. No weapons, no commands, just connection, like a hand reaching for yours. A voice comes over your comms, warm, human, tired and beautiful. We heard your story. We heard them all. Welcome back. You nod. You can't even speak. Your ship vibrates softly as the last of the memory stream completes. The elegy sends one final transmission, coordinates, not to Earth, not to any known sector, somewhere else, a place called Vespera. You ask Reyes. What's Vespera? He leans back. A promise. Outside, the veil begins to expand. You see the stars beyond it. Real stars, not memory. New routes, new systems, untouched by conquered, unwritten, unfiltered. And in that moment, you understand. This was never just a war. It was a reclamation, not of land or power, of story. Some say, the stars bled that day because of weapons too terrible to describe. But now you know better. They bled because finally, someone had the courage to remember out loud. You dock with the elegy under a sky made of fading memory and blooming possibility. The bay doors part slowly, not with the grinding mechanical shudder of warships past, but with a grace earned through time. This ship wasn't built in a rush. It was crafted, like a violin, or a temple. As you step into its airlock, the ship greets you, not vocally, not even through neural interface, just a warmth, the kind you feel walking into a room where someone's been waiting all day to see you again. Reyes limps beside you, straightening with each step. This place feeds him, feeds all of you. The energy here is different. It doesn't buzz like a reactor core or hum like fusion drive coils. It resonates, like a shared memory. You pass through a corridor where the walls ripple faintly, not with light, but with moments. Images of other humans flash, shimmer, fade. You recognize none of them, but you feel like you could. You reach the bridge. It's half lit, ringed with consoles made from crystallized interface glass. In the center, a woman, middle-aged with silver hair pulled into a tight braid and a uniform that bears no rank, no insignia, just a single line of text stitched along the collar. No voice louder than truth. She turns. "Welcome aboard," she says, voice quiet but not timid. "I'm Sarai Kesh, caretaker of the elegy, and, unofficially, the last librarian of Earth's second silence." You nod, unsure whether to salute, bow, or cry. You settle on standing very still. Reyes steps forward. "Is the archive complete?" Sarai nods. Every node recovered, every falsehood unspooled, and one new entry just logged. She smiles at you. You blink. That's it? I show up and suddenly history starts changing? No, she says gently. You showed up and we stopped pretending it never happened. She walks to a console and gestures you over. We've been broadcasting from here for decades. Quiet pulses, memory packets, drift signals. Some intercepted, some erased, but most just ignored. She taps the screen. Dozens of transmissions appear, all unsent. All tagged. Awaiting verified witness. You stare. Why me? She shrugs. You answered the relay. The one we looped near the red dwarf. You came when you were supposed to turn back. Reyes adds. You listened to the dead. That's all we ever asked. You examined the data clusters. One is titled The Siege of Thought and Fire. Another, The Pact We Refused. A third simply reads, Starlight That Screamed. These are everything, you whisper. Sarai nods. All. The things they said were too inconvenient to remember. You pause. What happens now? She smiles. Not with triumph, with quiet relief. Now we send it all. The ship hums. No, sings. The hull vibrates as the elegy begins her task. Not a jump. Not a strike. A broadcast. One by one, the memories begin to radiate outward, encoded into light, layered into graviton. Pulses stretched across slipstream corridors, not forcing, just offering. Truth seeded through the galaxy like pollen waiting for breath. Back on the conquered cruiser, somewhere far above, someone will notice. Someone will panic, others will remember, and some, just a few, will listen. Sarai turns to you. You should know, this may bring them. You nod. They already know, but now they'll know we know. You think for a moment. Then, we give them a choice. She raises an eyebrow. You continue, voice steady, to forget, or to remember alongside us. Behind you, Reyes grins. Now that's the Earth I remember. Outside the viewport, the stars flicker, not because they're dying, but because they're being rewritten, realigned not by force, but by witness. The galaxy doesn't change with warheads, not permanently. It changes when someone says, no, this matters, and makes it impossible to unhear. The elegy completes its first broadcast, and somewhere out there, a child born into conquered silence hears a name she was never taught in school. Somewhere, an archivist deletes a line of propaganda and quietly replaces it with a question. Somewhere, a Concord commander orders silence and is met with refusal. Some historians will call this an error in record-keeping. Others will call it resurgence. But here, aboard this ship, it's something simpler. It's truth breathing again. The broadcast doesn't end. It evolves. At first, it's just the historical archive. Battles, speeches, cryologs, fragments of laughter recorded in the halls of forgotten ships. But then come the voices. Not famous ones. Not generals or philosophers. Cooks, nurses, poets. Who never published. Engineers who sang to their tools. A child's joke caught on a helmet mic during evacuation. All of it. Sent. You watch the data unfold on the main display, forming threads that stretch across light years, weaving into the slipstream like veins into a new kind of heart. The elegy has no weapons, but she carries something far more volatile. Unedited memory. You sit in the observation cradle while the rest of the ship hums with purpose. Sarai configures pulse intervals. Reyes coordinates with a handful of hidden satellites scattered beyond. Concord sensors, the whisper net, he calls it. Meanwhile, you reflect you'd come here by accident, curiosity, boredom maybe. But now it feels like this story had been waiting for someone like you all along. Not because you were special, but because you were uninvested, unwritten. That made you the perfect ink. Captain, your ship chimes softly in your earpiece. We are receiving a response. You sit upright. From where? Unknown origin. Encryption resembles old Earthside pre-drift protocols. Highly fragmented. Reyes glances over, concern threading his brow. That's either a joke from a dead satellite or someone pulling strings we didn't know still existed. You patch it through. The message is scratchy, cut in places, distorted by time or sabotage, but audible. If you're receiving this, you are not alone. Vespera holds. The ember chain is intact. Repeat. Vespera holds. Your spine prickles. Sarai's face shifts from calm to something like awe. We thought Vespera was theory, a name, a legend. Reyes mutters, more than a legend now. You ask, what is it? He leans forward. A fallback colony, not a bunker. A seed. Built in a region Conquered couldn't detect. Folded between drift layer ridges. If this is real, it means we're not just remembering. We're rebuilding. Your ship confirms. Coordinates embedded in the signal. Real-time drift jump unshielded. Risky but traceable. Sarai turns to you. Do we go? You look to the viewport, at the stars bleeding light into new shapes, new directions. Yeah, you whisper. We go. Your ship begins charging its drive core. The sound deepens, not mechanical but choral. Like the hull is humming in anticipation, the elegy pivots silently, aligning with the drift coordinates. You feel it as much as hear it, the hum of trajectory threading through a forgotten path. And then, fracture, drift space folds over you. You see nothing, hear nothing, but you feel everything. Memories not your own cascade through you. Brief, beautiful, unbearable. A pilot screaming in joy as her ship spins through impossible odds. A father recording a bedtime story on a dying relay for a child who will never hear it. A Concorde technician hesitating before pressing delete on a history packet, then quietly pressing archive instead. You land. Vespera isn't a planet. Not exactly. It's a station. But unlike any you've seen, built not in orbit around a sun but nestled in the gravitational folds of a dark energy well. Hidden, silent, and alive. Its outer shell shimmers with pulse light, language. You scan it. Welcome back. The docking. Collar opens. A small team boards the elegy. They wear hybrid uniforms, earth material, Concord cut. One steps forward. Young, steady. Her eyes scan each of you. I'm Alia Novar, she says, caretaker of Vespera and keeper of the Ember Chain. You glance at Reyes. His expression breaks into something like reverence. Alia continues. We've been preserving what we could. Waiting for a signal. Waiting for proof that memory survived. Sarai steps forward, handing her the full archive module. It did. Alia cradles it like a child, and then, without preamble, she says, It's time. Time for what? You ask. Alia looks at you, and her voice is soft thunder. To remind the galaxy that silence was a choice, not a surrender. You exhale. Slowly, the galaxy is shifting. You can feel it. The first tremors of truth never cause explosions. They cause questions, and questions, once born, don't die quietly. Vespera doesn't just house survivors, it cultivates memory. The deeper you explore its curved halls and light-threaded passageways, the more you realize this place is alive with the weight of what was lost. There are no guards here, no weapons, just archivists, engineers, children who learn history like others learn songs, elders who carry timelines in their bones, holograms of cities that never existed, languages that were erased elsewhere still spoken fluently at dinner, and in every corridor, subtle etched lines glow faintly when touched, quotes, questions, fragments of old dreams. You run your hand along one wall and trigger a line in broken Terran standard. They thought silence was the same as peace. We taught them the difference. Sarai calls it the Echo Archive. Each citizen of Vespera adds one phrase, once in their life at the moment they believe they've truly remembered something no one else ever will. You're invited to add one, not now, when you're ready. For now you attend the Ember Gathering. The central chamber, half cathedral, half observatory, is packed with people. No stage, no seats. Just standing clusters, voices low, the way you'd speak in a temple made. From old war songs and harder choices, at the center, a single flame. Not symbolic, real. Fed not by fuel but energy pulled from resonance fields. Encoded with memory. Each ember, they tell you, contains the data and emotional trace of a single moment from the past. When they let one fly, it flickers through the room like a firefly, casting shadows that replay the memory briefly on every surface it passes. It's not just light. It's testimony with wings. Reyes stands beside you, arms folded, face taut with a kind of restrained awe. Alia steps forward. She doesn't speak loudly. Doesn't need to. This is not a ceremony, she says. It's an announcement. The silence has ended. And if they come for us again, they won't find rebels. They'll find record keepers. She gestures, and a single ember is released. The flame arcs through the chamber. It brushes a wall, and for a moment you see Elise Juno again, her hand raised against a burning sky, eyes bright with the fire of refusal. Another ember releases, Riva Tran, screaming as she broadcasts her final log, face bloodied but voice calm. Another, the pilot laughing through the chaos, calling out coordinates no one believed in. And then one brushes you, and suddenly you're back in the ruined relay station. Cold walls, red dwarf outside, the broken loop of warning echoing forever. But this time the voice speaks directly to you. Thanks for not turning around. The memory fades. The ember continues. You don't say anything for a while. When the last ember settles into the flame again, Alia turns to you. We want to show them who we are, not just tell them. We need to move beyond Vespera. Broadcast not just memories, but presence. Reyes leans in. You mean re-enter the drift? She nods. We've developed something new. A way to move through the galaxy without triggering Conquer detection. Not cloaking. Mislabeling. You blink. You're going to disguise yourself as what? Cargo? Sarai chuckles. As irrelevance. Alia smiles. They've trained their sensors to ignore stories they've already written endings for. So we'll become one of them. Background noise. A ghost. And then we'll start speaking again. Loud enough for the children of Concord to ask, why weren't we taught this? She turns to you. And we want you to be on the first drift stream. Mission. You pause. You didn't come here to become part of something, but somewhere along the way you stopped being an observer. Where's the mission headed? She tilts her head. Back to Concord space, to a place they claim we never touched. A world called Evenix. They teach it was never scarred by war. But the Echo Archive says otherwise. Reyes nods. Evenix was where the Accord tried to end. The conflict with a gift, we rejected it. They called it aggression. Alia adds, now it's a museum. A lie carved in stone. You understand? You want me to plant the truth. Not just plant, she says. Ignite. And just like that, you say yes. Because some lies are too heavy to be left standing and some stories demand return. Your mission begins before dawn, though time on Vespera is more symbolic than functional. The station exists between solar cycles, and its people have long since stopped measuring in hours. They measure in moments, and this one is heavy. You stand. In the drift hangar, a chamber shaped like a seashell lined with pulse-reactive plating. At its center rests your vessel, the Kismet Relay, one of the few remaining Earth Fleet courier-class ships, retrofitted with Vespera's mislabeling array. Looks unassuming. Which is the point. Sarai walks the perimeter checking last-minute diagnostics while Reyes configures the ship's memory anchors, a defensive tool, he explains, designed to broadcast personal recollection as distortion. Concord sensors, trained on logic and predictability, recoil from contradiction. Think of it like throwing bad poetry into a computer's processor, he says. They'll hate it. You smile. That's very us. He claps your shoulder. Remember, we're not just sneaking in, we're reminding them. Alia hands you the mission package. It's analog, a small black case containing a physical shard of memory. You open it briefly and glimpse the flicker. Elise Juno, again. This one, a recording of her final message before the fleet burned. We gave them every chance, but they only spoke peace in the language of erasure. We answered in the dialect of fire. You close the case. The Kismet relay purrs as you step aboard. The controls feel familiar, like a coat worn down to your shape. The mislabeling drive spools up quietly, a miracle of subterfuge. Instead of hiding the ship, it lies to every scanner within 1,000 light years. You're now registered as a weather survey drone. Model unknown. Priority negligible. Perfect. As you lift off, Vespera shrinks behind you, a point of stillness in the chaos of drift space. You feel it like a heartbeat against your back. The archive, the embers, the people who refuse to be forgotten. You drift. The eye. Transition into conquered space is smooth, almost anticlimactic. No alarms, no pursuit. You coast beneath a vast lattice of sensor buoys, each one blind to you, thanks to the WhisperNet's forged identity. Ahead lies Ivanix, once a war zone, now a curated lie. From orbit, it looks peaceful, greener than you expected. Conquered terraformers are thorough. The scarred cities have been replaced with graceful arcologies and bioreactive gardens. Educational spires jut into the sky like neutral statements. You read the orbital declaration as your ship glides past. Ivanix, symbol of unity, site of first contact peace ceremony. You scoff. The truth is darker. The peace ceremony was a forced integration attempt. Earth refused. Ivanix burned. Concord scrubbed the footage and planted a forest. Your drop point is subtle, a forgotten valley near the equator, once home to a refugee encampment during the war. It's now a memory park, where citizens walk artificial trails and read scripted plaques about cultural misunderstandings. You land beneath a canopy of reconstructed trees. Their leaves rustle perfectly. Their shadows behave precisely. Everything here is designed to look unaltered. You step out in full civilian disguise. No Earth fleet markings, no weapons, just the shard, and your voice. In the center of the memory, Park stands a monolith, sleek, quiet, and dishonest. It bears one line. Peace was chosen here. You kneel beside it and open the black case. The memory shard pulses, and then you embed it into the stone. The effect is immediate. A hum ripples through the ground. The polished monolith flickers, and for a second the entire plaza reveals what once was. Fire, panic, screaming. A ship screaming overhead, burning on re-entry. Refugees huddled, a voice calling orders. And Elise Juno's final scream of defiance. Then silence. The illusion reasserts itself. But something's changed. You walk away. Across the city, tourists stare at their neural feeds, glitching for the first time in generations. Concord archives briefly cycle an alert. Unauthorized context detected. Within hours, that message will be buried. But the glitch will remain, and someone will ask. Someone always does. You reach orbit in less than an hour. The Kismet relay cloaks itself once again, not by vanishing, but by becoming boring. Another empty drone in a sea of bureaucracy. Sarai's voice comes through a tight band transmission. It worked. You're in the streams. You sigh in relief. Was it enough? A pause. Not yet, but it started, Reyes adds. They'll call it a systems malfunction, a mislabel, a rogue AI. You nod, and someone will ask why, because that's always how it begins, not with riots, not with rebellion, with a question asked in a place where only answers were permitted. You stay in the drift corridor longer than necessary, coasting between systems with the Kismet relay whispering itself into irrelevance. There's no pursuit, no alarms, just the slow tick of subtle consequences. Back on Ivanix, people are starting to notice. In their clean arcologies, one plaque doesn't update. A drone exhibit malfunctions and loops Elise Juno's Defiance in the background of a garden audio tour. Someone posts a question to the Concord educational net. Who was Tal Reyes and Why can't I find him in the archives? Within an hour, the post is gone, but not before it's seen. You let the kismet coast. Because this part isn't about speed. It's about drift. The slow, inevitable shift of attention. Concord's hold isn't broken by explosions. It's frayed by doubt. You rendezvous with a second courier, the Marrow Echo, piloted by a quiet, sharp-eyed woman named Sen. She doesn't ask where you've been. She just uploads the new packets to the next route. How bad was Evenix? She asks as your ship's link hulls for the brief transfer. Beautiful, you say, which made it worse. She nods. They say truth is an ugly thing, but it's the lies that need makeup. Once the data is transferred, you separate again. No ceremony. Each ship returns to the drift like drops of water vanishing into mist. You reconnect with Vespera a few days later. The ember chain pulses brighter now, and the central archive has doubled in size. More stories, more embers, and more volunteers ready to carry truth to the corners of the galaxy. Reyes is different when you see him again. Straighter, sharper, as if memory has become fuel. They're listening, he says, scrolling through intercepted Concord messages. They're denying harder, which means they're worried. Sarai enters with a small artifact in her hands. It's a Concord signal node, an old diplomatic relay, long since obsolete, but it's been modified. We caught this on an old listening satellite, she says. It's Concord, but someone altered the signal. You listen, it's short. We were wrong. They didn't fight us because they hated peace. They fought because we didn't understand pain. Another voice follows. I remember Elise Juno. I was told to forget. I didn't. And then static. The room falls silent. Reyes runs a hand through his graying hair. There. It started. Cracks in the glass. Alia appears beside you. Are you ready for the next assignment? You smile. Always. She shows you the route. This one's different. Not a planet, not a conquered capital or historic lie. This one's a station. Old. Deep space abandoned for 2 centuries, supposedly lost during the drift storm collapse. But the Ember Chain believes otherwise. The station's name was Threshold, Alia says, and it was a place where humans and Concord met, worked together, laughed, shared. You frown. That doesn't fit either side's story. Exactly, she replies, which means someone buried it. You're to retrieve its log core, restore the last days of that cooperation, and upload them to Concord's own diplomatic network using a backdoor only the WhisperNet remembers. Let them hear what they forgot they missed, Alia says, and so, you go. Threshold is silent when you arrive, drifting alone in a sector so bland Concord rerouted star traffic around it to avoid sensor anomalies. Your ship fakes a diagnostic ping and docks cleanly. Inside, dust, still. Air and absence. But as you walk the halls, you start to see the traces. A chessboard in mid-game on a table. A child's drawing of both human and Concord crew members taped to a wall. Old messages scrawled in multiple languages above a food dispenser. Best soup this side of the spiral. Humans cheat at cards. Still love 'em. We should never have left. You reach the command deck. It's intact. And waiting. The log core takes only minutes to extract. But the final recording, displayed as the last recorded message, takes your breath away. It's a Concordian, voice smooth even. But this time, emotional. We were told to abandon Threshold, said the war made this place inconvenient. We disagreed. They shut us down. But before we go dark, I want to say this. We made something beautiful here. A friendship neither species deserved, but both needed. You upload the message into your ship. And then, with a quiet laugh, you inject it directly into a Concord propaganda satellite, still lazily orbiting a nearby moon. For 10 seconds, every Concord civilian channel across 3 systems broadcasts a strange, unexpected line. We should never have left. Then static. Then silence, and then questions, because someone heard it. And once heard, truth is hard to unhear. The questions spread like spores in a quiet forest, unnoticed at first, then everywhere. Concord's official response is predictable. A weather satellite malfunctioned. Rogue code. No historical significance. They issue a patch. Pull down. Copies. Reassure the public. But a teenager on Ethra 9 uploads a reaction video within hours, breaking down the message, comparing tone patterns, dissecting metadata. Her stream hits 1 million views by morning. It's banned by noon. Too late. A conquered archivist quietly adds the threshold file to a private server and forgets to encrypt it. It leaks to 3 systems, then 5, then 23. Some citizens dismiss it. Others call it dangerous, but many just say, "Why weren't we told?" You return to Vespera to find the archive buzzing with activity. The air thrums with new embers, dozens, maybe hundreds. Young people recording their family stories. Old defectors finally naming names. A conquered technician breaking down, weeping, as she recounts watching a city vanish during the Varelia campaign and being told it never existed. The ember chain's fire has become a blaze. Alia calls you to the observatory deck. The massive viewing window looks out over Vespera's dark energy ridge, where starlight distorts gently like ripples in an ocean of glass. She's holding a new transmission, one so sensitive, it never touched the open network. Origin, conquered. Council archive classification. Internal only tone flag. Uncertainty, it reads. Too many fractures. Control models destabilizing. Behavioral anomalies among 4th-gen consensus citizens. Historical divergence is accelerating. And then more personally, we should have left them alone. Sarai enters behind you, smiling faintly. That's the first time they've used the word we. Reyes, leaning against the doorway, chuckles. Next thing you know, they'll be apologizing. Alia folds the transmission. Not likely, but maybe they'll stop trying to erase us. And that's the turning point, not war, not victory. Recognition. Vespera begins broadcasting openly. No more stealth. No more false flags. Their signal is now unjammed, omnidirectional, wrapped in memory, carried on every ripple of drift space like a gospel written in starlight and grief. And people start coming. Ships, families, exiles, even Concordians. Some arrive in disguise. Others in uniform but with helmets removed. They bring their own stories, their own embers. Some are welcomed with tears. Others with cautious silence. But none are turned away. You're standing at the entry platform 1 cycle later when a child walks up to you holding a handwritten note. Her eyes are bright. Her translator patch is outdated, and she speaks slowly. She says, "You're the one who made the questions. You kneel." Not made. Just reminded. She hands you the note. It says, "My father was on the gallant repose. He never came home. Now I know where he went." You don't have words. She hugs you anyway. Later, as you return to your ship, now upgraded with Vespera's latest harmonized memory array, you pause by the central archive. Sarai joins you. "We've done it, haven't we?" you ask. She thinks. Then shakes her head. "We've begun it. That's all truth ever needs. A final request waits for you." The Echo Archive wall, where every person who remembers may leave their phrase. Your turn, you approach. Fingers trembling, you place your palm on the glowing stone. It hums. You whisper, "They told us silence was safer. We proved that truth can drift." The wall pulses, locks it in, and goes quiet again. That night you sit beneath a sky not yours and watch new ships arrive, each bearing stories, broken maps, laughter, contradiction, scars, everything the conquered could never understand. Some say the stars bled that day because of humanity's rage. Others say they bled because for the first time the galaxy listened. But you know why. Because someone asked why not. Because someone refused to forget. Because you answered the call, and so the silence ends. Now let the momentum drift away. The stars fade behind closed eyes. The ship grows quiet. The hum beneath your seat dims into the rhythm of your own breath. You are not in orbit anymore. Not in battle. Not running messages through impossible war zones or planting stories in false gardens. You are home, wherever that may be. Let the galaxy pause for you. Let it spiral outward on its own for a while. It doesn't need you right now, not because you aren't needed, but because you did. Enough. You reminded a forgotten world of its voice. You carried memory across silence. You gave shape to ghosts who had only ever asked to be seen. And somewhere, in a quiet conquered library, a page is being rewritten. Because you lived. Because you told the truth. Because you asked. So take this moment. Let it settle into your chest like starlight finding stillness. No more alarms, no more transmissions, just the quiet hum of peace earned without surrender. Just the breath of a galaxy relearning how to listen. Sleep well, traveler. The stars will keep your place.